Hey everyone, Jules Ballman here. I am just going to show you guys how to make sourdough from the beginning to the end, and I'm going to start with my sourdough starter that I have. So step one is taking it out of the refrigerator and pouring it into a bowl of some kind. Just going to use this smaller plasticky type bowl to get my starter out of here and get it started with reactivating and waking up. Boy, a little messy. And then all I'm going to do is simply add in a half a cup of water, and I'm going to stir that up. See this. And then I'm going to add in about a cup of flour. Give that a good stir. And once that gets to the consistency of like, this is a little bit more than the consistency of, I'm going to have to add a little bit more water. I want this to be like how it would look for muffin mix. Like the batter you would have for muffins when you make muffins. So just a little bit wetter. I don't know if you can see that, but that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to give this a stir, and I'm going to cover this with a cloth, which I have here, and I'm going to let this rest for a good 12 hours. And after 12 hours, I'm going to come back and we're going to go to the next phase. But this is really needs to be set in a warm area. It's going to double in size, and then it'll be active and ready for us to use to get the bread started. Okay, so you guys, there's one thing I forgot to mention. It's really very, very important. Every time I bring my sourdough out and I start it and wake it up and feed it, I always make sure I put the sourdough that I want to keep in my clean jar directly back in the refrigerator. And I do this as soon as possible because I have forgotten quite a few times and made up my whole sourdough and forgot to leave some to save for later. So fortunately, I've been fortunate enough to have friends that have had some of my sourdough starter, and they've given it back to me. So I have my original batch because I started this back in 2015. This, as of today, it's about 8 years old, and I kind of want my starter because the older it is, the better it is because it has more flavor. At least that is how the story goes. Anyway, so I'm going to put my little saran wrapper back on that. I'm going to stick this in my fridge, which is packed full of stuff. And then I still have plenty of starter left to do my batch of bread that I want to do today. Okay, thanks. Okay, it's been 12 hours now, and my sourdough has risen really nicely, and I just need to get a half a cup of this to work with to make my one loaf of bread. So I'm going to be kind of generous and fill this up, and I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to scrape out the rest of this to save for later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half a cup of sourdough, add it to my bowl. And when you're making bread, you always want to do it with a plan of bringing out the sourdough 24 hours in advance. Because, you know, I let that bread, the sourdough starter, reactivate. It took 12 hours. And now I am going to mix this up, this batch, and this is going to sit for 12 hours or 8 hours, 8 to 12. I mean, it's going to sit overnight, and then I'm going to work on it in the morning and make bread. So I have 1.5 cups of water that I'm adding to this. I'm going to stir that in, and you really want to keep stirring this until it really all liquefies. So the sourdough starter is going to break down. It's very watery. And you want to use like a lukewarm water to do this. And then I'm going to add in roughly 2 tablespoons of salt. So I'm going to put it in my hand, a nice big pile. I'm going to put that in there. It's about 2 tablespoons. And then to this, I'm going to add 3 cups of flour. So I'm going to do, this is a 1/2 cup. That's 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. And I'm going to move that out of the way. And we're going to mix this up. And with sourdough, you really don't need the dough ball. The sourdough really breaks down a lot of the gluten in the bread, and it gives you a really nice rise, and without having to do too much to it. But I will have to say that I feel like I need to add a little love into this loaf by giving it a little bit of kneading. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to, and that lets me feel the dough to see how wet it is, because you really kind of want this to be not too dry, but not too wet. Like you want it to be able to pull off of the surface that you're working on and not stick. And as you'll see, the flour is going to really incorporate into this dough ball. Picking up a lot of that flour. It's still a little moist. Need a little bit more flour. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to scrape as much as I can out of my bowl before I put this in my sink, because I will tell you that sourdough, if it's left in your sink and not really washed good down the sink, it can be like cement in your pipes and be really bad. So you want to make sure you add plenty of water, break down the dough that's left in your bowl before you let it go down your drain. You want to put down with plenty of water. So this is pretty good. That's all I'm going to do to that. And then I'm going to grease a bowl. And I want the bowl to be at least 3 times the size of the dough ball, because the dough ball is going to rise 2 to 3 times more than its size. So I'm going to use this bowl here and put some oil in there. Simply going to use the back of my hand and just rub that all around. And so that's all nicely greased. And then I'm throw my dough ball right in there. Then I'm going to take some cling wrap and I am going to grease this. I don't have any Pam left, so I can't just spray it on there, but I'm just going to simply dabble that on there, and I'm going to use the back of my hand and cover my saran wrap with my olive oil. I'm going to cover that with that. I'm going to put my towel back over the top, and this is going to sit overnight. It's now about 10 o'clock at night, and I'm going to get up in the morning around 7, and I'm going to go to the next step of finally making the bread. But this is how you mix up your dough, and you get it ready so it can poof overnight, and then we'll get on to finishing the loaf. Okay, thanks.